Welcome to NHL Quick Hits. I'm David Crosby here with Steele Roden, and there are plenty of great storylines around the NHL right now. Connor McDavid joined historic company by breaking that 100-point barrier. A trio of rookies finished the season really strong. Tim Stützle became the youngest Senator to score a hat trick. Jason Robertson scored the OT winner in his second half push, and Kirill Kaprizov, one of the NHL's 3 stars. And then, of course, both the Blue Jackets with John Tortorella and the Coyotes with Rick Tocchet have parted ways, and each of those teams will be searching for a new head coach this season. But we don't want to talk about any of that. We want to talk about the playoffs. Tuesday night, the Canadiens earned a point in a 4-3 overtime loss to the Oilers to clinch that final playoff spot, meaning we now have our 16-team field for the postseason. We are going to preview every series before the playoff begins, and we'll start with one of my favorite matchups involving the defending Stanley Cup champions. The Lightning and Panthers will meet in the playoffs somehow. For the first time ever, Florida spanked Tampa 5-1 on Saturday, blanked them 4-0 on Monday night to clinch that home ice advantage in the first round. There is no love lost between these two teams. I hope you were one of the lucky people to be watching these games because it was chippy, it was rough, there were fights, there were huge hits, there was everything you would want out of this rivalry, and this intensity is only going to ratchet up that much more once we get to the postseason. Now, zooming out a little bit, Florida's been great against Tampa Bay this season. They're 5-2-1 in that Battle of Florida. But the biggest question in this series, in my mind, is who is going to be between the pipes for the Cats. Sergei Bobrovsky is 19-8-2 with a .906 save percentage this season, including a 3-2 record against the Lightning with an .879 save percentage in those 5 games. Chris Driedger, on the other hand, 14-6-3 with a sparkling .927 save percentage. And after Monday's shutout, he is 2-0-1 versus the Lightning with a .913 save percentage. The unlikely wild card, of course, is super prospect Spencer Knight, who we're probably not going to see, but it is worth mentioning he has a perfect 4-0 record and a .919 save percentage. So, Steele, after having said all of that, in your mind, who do you think should start game 1 for Florida? Who's backing him up? And how quickly do you turn to the backup if things go south?
Yeah, it's a great question. In all honesty, I think it would be premature to put Spencer Knight in for round 1 in game 1 against the defending champions like the Tampa Bay Lightning. So a little premature, even though he's played spectacularly in those 4 games he's played so far this season. So my top 2 guys are Sergei Bobrovsky and Chris Driedger. I think they've been lights out all year, especially Driedger for the Florida Panthers. And that's who I'm starting in that for game 1. For the Florida Panthers. Like you said, .927 save percentage on the season, a .207 goals against average, 3 shutouts. He's played 8 less games than Bobrovsky, but still, Bobrovsky hasn't been the same person since he's landed in Florida. He just hasn't been the same goalie, especially since last year we saw how terrible he was. So I think Driedger's been the better goalie for Florida, even though he's played 8 less games. I think he's definitely the number 1 I would start. I'm not quite sure if the Florida Panthers will agree with me. I think they'll go with Bobrovsky for game 1.
I'm totally with you there. I have this really bad feeling. I shouldn't say bad because Bobrovsky's been good, but I have a feeling that they are going to start Bobrovsky in game 1. I think Driedger's earned it. I think he's not only been more consistent over the last couple of seasons than Bobrovsky. Let's face it, he's been better against the Lightning. And I think that exclamation point of getting that shutout in that final game, to me, should earn him that spot in net. But let's talk about the defending champs now. The Lightning expect Steven Stamkos and Nikita Kucherov back for the playoffs, but word came out on Monday that defenseman Victor Hedman has been playing through a lower body injury that will require surgery in the offseason. So what is your level of concern with the health of this team heading into the postseason?
Well, I think from the Lightning's perspective, if you're getting Stamkos and Kucherov back, you're very excited about this. But for me, my level of concern is really high. And just because of these injuries that they've been dealing with, even like you said, it's been said that Stamkos and Kucherov should be ready to go for the first round of the playoffs. We know Stamkos' history with injuries, though. He only played 1 game in the postseason last year. Luckily for them, that he was able to score in that game early on before he had to exit it early late in the first period. But again, we know Stamkos' injury history, so it's a little questionable with him. The question for me is how rusty will Kucherov be? You know, he's been out for the entire season. we all get it. He's Kucherov. He's a spectacular player, one of the top 3 players in the league, top 5 depending on who you talk to. But Kucherov, it's going to be tough to see if he can keep pace. So even with Kucherov and Stamkos in a line, it's going to be a threat for the Florida Panthers on both sides of the ice. But it all depends on if he's going to be able to keep up with the pace of the postseason. We know how fast it gets, especially in round 1, and how physical and all those things are. Another question for me is, how are they going to manage Victor Hedman and those big ice minutes he's going to be playing against the Florida Panthers? He's their superstar defenseman on the blue line. They're going to need him to be going in and game out. And if he has a nagging injury, what's going to happen with that? So I'm really curious to see what the Tampa Bay Lightning do to maybe manage Victor Hedman's ice time. And then another question that I actually brought up is, what are the Lightning going to do if Vasilevsky goes down? Because Curtis McElhinney's just been absolutely terrible this year. And I was actually looking at all the 16 teams that made it into the postseason. I think besides the Edmonton Oilers, I can say that the Tampa Bay Lightning have the worst backup going into the postseason. So if anything happens to Vasilevsky or something happens to Stamkos or Hedman or Kucherov isn't 100%, I think they're going to get beaten in the first round.
For a team that I would consider in the running for one of, if not the best team in the league, that is a ton of question marks. And I'm really glad you brought up McElhinney, because that is a huge question. This team doesn't have a lot of weaknesses, but that is probably their biggest weakness. And let's be honest, if Vasilevsky goes down, it's over for Tampa. But that kind of makes it a little more difficult for me to see how this series goes, just because I believe Vasilevsky is good enough to steal a whole series by himself, let alone a game. So it is really interesting to see how Tampa's going to be rolling heading into that first round. But despite those health woes, the Lightning are still more than twice as likely as the Panthers are to win the Cup this season, according to the betting odds right now. So in your mind, what are the keys for Florida to take down the defending champs?
Well, for me, obviously, Barkov and Huberdeau are your cornerstones, and they're going to get the job done. They can make plays happen whenever they want. They're just superstars for the Florida Panthers. But again, like I mentioned, with Kucherov and Stamkos coming and set to return for the first round of the playoffs, it creates a threat on both sides of the ice, especially on the power play. Because Stamkos and Kucherov like to hang out by the top of the circles and just take those feeds from Victor Hedman and shoot it right on net with those one-timers that they have. So it's definitely a big threat for the Florida Panthers. So my key is defense, and it's going to be big for the Panthers. I think they have to keep them to the outside. They have to keep Stamkos, the quick rushes through the neutral zone, keep them on the outside. Don't let them get to the middle of the ice, because once you let that happen, it's going to be tough for Bobrovsky if he's definitely the starting goalie in net. So keep them to the outside. Definitely make sure that you're big time on defense, because we all know that the Florida Panthers have done a lot better than the Tampa Bay Lightning this year. They can take it to them on the offense. So just make sure your defense is there and ready to go.
Well, let's finish this one off with a prediction. How do you think this series plays out?
I'm going to go with the Florida Panthers in 6. And I say that just because of all the questions we've brought up with the Lightning so far. And another thing that I thought about too is just both coaches for these teams have been great, but Joel Quenneville has just been outstanding for the Florida Panthers, getting this team to buy into the system and getting the things that he wants done from his team. So with the lineup they have throughout the forwards, it's obviously a little bit of a hit for the defensemen of the Florida Panthers with Aaron Ekblad still out. So that's why I'm saying defense is going to be such a big key for them. But they have tremendous depth up and down the lineup. They have 2 great goaltenders in Bobrovsky and Driedger. I still hope that they go to Driedger in game 1 and hopefully for the first round of the playoffs to see how well he can get the job done. But I've got the Florida Panthers in 6 just because of Huberdeau and how well Huberdeau and Barkov have been this season.
I think this is a bad matchup for the Lightning, and it is so difficult to make consecutive deep playoff runs with a regular schedule, let alone with the shortened off season, the compact schedule this season. I wouldn't be surprised if they prove me very wrong, and maybe you've been checking my notes, but I will also take the Panthers in 6 games in this one. Either way, this is going to be an amazing series. Can't wait for this one to get started. That's all the time we have for today's episode, but tune in for more playoff previews this week. On behalf of Steel Roden, I'm David Crosby, and thanks for tuning in to NHL Quick Hits.